Imagine the weight of silence. A sacred vow made in the dim-lit halls of Rome's ancient temples, promising eternal chastity. Now, imagine the horror of breaking that vow. A transgression so severe, so unthinkable, that the price was death. The penalty was not swift nor quick. It was a slow, agonizing end, a punishment steeped in ritual and brutality. For the Roman Vestal Virgins, the punishment for breaking their vow was far worse than anything you could imagine. The flames that consumed their spirit were not of fire, but of the cold hand of justice, carved from a past where divine law and brutal reality were one and the same. If this dark and tragic tale of loyalty, betrayal, and brutal justice intrigues you, make sure to like and subscribe for more insights into history's most harrowing stories. The life of a Vestal Virgin was one of sacred duty. They were chosen at a young age, sworn to serve Vesta, the goddess of hearth and home, for 30 years. But what happened when one of them faltered? What was the price of breaking a vow made to both the gods and the people of Rome? In this video, we'll delve into the life of these women, who they were, what they endured, and the ultimate price they paid for breaking their sacred oath. We'll witness the terror that gripped those who violated their vows and the brutal consequences that followed. As we move through the story, we'll uncover not only the practices and punishments, but also the myths and legends that surrounded the Vestal Virgins, exploring the legacy they left on Roman society. We'll see how the sacred role of these women was both a mark of honor and a sentence to unyielding expectations. The sun rises over Rome, its golden light casting long shadows across the city's grand temples and sacred altars. Among them, one temple rises above all, the Temple of Vesta, home to the Vestal Virgins. This wasn't just any temple. It was the beating heart of Rome's spiritual life, a place where the very soul of the Republic was believed to be protected. But more than just a physical structure, it was a sanctuary where women, bound by their vows, gave themselves entirely to the service of Vesta, the goddess of the hearth and home. The Vestal Virgins were not ordinary women. Chosen at the most esteemed families, these girls were taken at a young age, often as young as 6 or 7, and bound by a sacred vow of chastity and service. For 30 years, they would tend to the eternal flame that burned within the temple, symbolizing Rome's survival and prosperity. They were the guardians of this flame, and their role was as pivotal as it was sacred. The flame, burning day and night, represented Rome itself, a city built on loyalty, discipline, and sacrifice. Their duties were simple, yet profound. Keep the sacred fire burning, tend to the rituals, and maintain the purity of their vows. But this purity came at a steep cost. They were forbidden from marrying, from bearing children, from experiencing the joys and hardships of normal life. For 30 decades, they were to remain untouched by the world outside, their lives devoted entirely to Rome and to Vesta. However, the tension between the sacred and the human was always present. In the depths of the temple, these women lived lives of quiet isolation, their every action scrutinized, their every movement weighed against the expectations of a society that viewed them as the embodiment of Rome's virtue. The power of Rome, it was believed, rested on their shoulders, on their ability to remain pure and devoted. But what happened if one of them faltered? What if after years of dedication, the promise was broken? The consequences were unimaginable, as the laws governing the Vestals were as unforgiving as the gods themselves. If a Vestal Virgin broke her vow of chastity, it wasn't just a personal failure, it was a betrayal of Rome's very soul. The punishment for breaking the sacred vow was not just symbolic, nor was it swift. It was a public spectacle, a ritual that mirrored the depth of the crime. The Vestal who faltered would face death, but not death in the way one might expect. She wouldn't be executed by the typical methods of Rome, no sword, no gladiatorial combat, no executioner's axe. Instead, she would be condemned to a death that mirrored the desolation of her transgression, buried alive, a fate that was as cruel as it was final.
And yet, there was a strange cruelty in the very concept of her punishment. The
The Vestal Virgin was meant to be above the passions of the world, untouched by the desires and failings of human life. To force one of them to die so slowly, so painfully, was a punishment that reflected not just the wrath of the gods, but the unbearable weight of a broken covenant. To fully understand the brutal punishment that awaited a Vestal Virgin who violated her vow, one must first step into the heart of ancient Rome's sense of divine law, where the line between mortal sin and divine retribution blurred in the most terrible of ways. In Roman society, it wasn't just the violation of a sacred vow that called for such a fate. It was the very belief that the gods themselves would exact vengeance through the city's most sacred rituals. The Vestals, as custodians of Rome's prosperity, were believed to be the mediators between man and the divine. When one failed in her duty, it was as if she had cut off the very lifeblood of the Republic. It was not a simple matter of execution. It was a form of death meant to reflect the severity of the crime. A slow, torturous end that echoed the gravity of the transgression. The punishment was rooted in ancient religious practice, a ritual that not only condemned the body, but sought to sever the soul from the divine order itself. The Vestal who broke her vow would be led to a small underground chamber, prepared specifically for her death. It was an empty, silent place, designed to isolate her completely from the world. Here, in the silence of the earth, she would be sealed away, left to die alone. The method of her execution was deeply symbolic. The condemned Vestal would be placed in a small stone chamber, a tomb-like space, where she would be left with only a small amount of food and water, enough to survive for a few days. Yet the most harrowing part of this ritual was the complete isolation. She would be locked in this dark, airless cell, left alone to reflect on her crime. A crime so grave that it was considered to have threatened the very survival of Rome. The slow death that followed was meant not just to punish, but to purify. It was a cruel and inhumane reflection of the broken bond between the Vestal Virgin and the divine will. The terrifying paradox of this punishment lies in its cruel finality. The Vestal's death was not meant to be a swift one, nor was it meant to provide a quick escape from her guilt. It was a lingering, suffocating silence, the ultimate betrayal of the sacred vow she had taken. The isolation of the tomb-like chamber mirrored the isolation of her sin, as if to say that her act of impurity had cut her off completely from the world, from Rome, from the gods themselves. The public nature of this punishment was another layer of the tragedy. Though the condemned Vestal would be taken to the chamber in secrecy, her fall of grace was not a private matter. News of her violations spread quickly, and the people of Rome, who at once revered her as a symbol of purity and devotion, would now witness her fall into disgrace. The punishment was a warning to all, that no one, no matter how high their station or sacred their role, was above the will of the gods. It was not just the punishment of a single woman, it was the punishment of a society that demanded absolute loyalty and unwavering faithfulness from its most sacred servants. The slow death of the Vestal Virgin was a tragic spectacle not only for the victim, but for the people who watched. It wasn't just the death of a woman, but the death of an ideal, the death of something once held in the highest esteem. As the Romans watched, they would be reminded of the fragility of power and the consequences of betrayal. The Vestals were not just sacred because they were women who kept the fire of Rome alive, they were sacred because their purity represented Rome's commitment to the gods, a commitment that could not, under any circumstances, be broken. The punishment was both a mark of divine wrath and a reflection of Roman society's ruthless approach to order. If the Vestal Virgins, who held the most sacred and unassailable of duties, could fall, then who was safe? The tragic irony was that in punishing one Vestal for her broken vow, Rome reasserted its absolute dominance over its citizens, showing that no one, no matter how high, could escape the gaze of the gods. The story of the Vestal Virgins is one marked by unspeakable sacrifice, the weight of eternal vows, and the unforgiving judgment of a society that demanded nothing less than absolute devotion. These women, chosen for their purity, lived lives bound by divine laws and human expectations. Their every action scrutinized, their very existence a reflection of Rome's ideals. To break that sacred vow, even for the briefest moment, was to face a punishment so horrific it seems almost beyond belief. A slow, agonizing death, locked away in a tomb, cut off from the world and from the gods. But in this tragic tale lies a profound reflection on power, duty, and the cost of loyalty. The Vestal Virgins were not just religious figures, they were the embodiment of Rome's soul. They represented the city's enduring faith and its ruthless need for control. Their punishments, as horrific as they weren't just about chastisement, they were about power, about what happens when that power is threatened, when even the most sacred of oaths is broken. Yet the Vestal story didn't end with their death. The legacy they left was one of both reverence and fear. Their role in Roman society, while fraught with danger and tragedy, also served as a reminder of the fine line between devotion and submission. The eternal flame they tended never fully went out, even after their demise. It burned in the hearts of those who came after them, a symbol of what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, and to face the wrath of the gods. In the end, the Vestal Virgins remain a testament to the fragility of power, to the brutal consequences of betrayal, and to the ever-present tension between duty and desire. The flames of their sacrifice still flicker in the shadows of Rome's ruins, a quiet echo of the price of loyalty in a world ruled by gods and men alike. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, make sure to like and subscribe as we continue to explore the untold tragedies of history.